tale goes back 1,570 years, during a time when the Roman Empire was under siege by barbarian tribes. Both the barbarians and the Huns unleashed brutal attacks across Roman territories, trapped between the Adriatic and Tyrrhenian seas. Roman citizens had nowhere to run, with no land escape route. Their only hope was to flee toward the small islands scattered across the sea. These islands offered safety from invaders, but they were located in a coastal lagoon with such soft ground that standing upright was nearly impossible. Still, the desperate refugees not only found shelter there, they built wonders. Despite no solid ground or fresh water, they managed to create one of the greatest cities in history, Venice. But how did they manage such a feat? How did they construct a massive city on unstable islands nearly a millennium ago? Welcome back to another Zim Voice video. The refugees who escaped to the islands had nowhere to build proper homes. The land was too soft and swampy, anything placed there would sink. Some urged a return to the mainland, but that meant walking into the hands of the barbarians and Huns, who had already overrun the crumbling Roman Empire. There were about 150 muddy islets, around 5 kilometers from the shore, all equally unstable. At one point, a man trying to walk across the marsh began sinking. To keep himself from going under, he pushed his boat's paddle into the mud, and surprisingly, it struck something solid below. That moment sparked an idea that laid the groundwork for what would become Venice. Just across the water, in present-day Croatia, dense forests provided sturdy tree trunks. These were transported to the islands and driven deep into the marshes. Once they reached solid earth, around 5 meters down, they became stable supports. Placed close together, these wooden piles formed a solid base. The tops were cut flat, and wooden planks were placed above to evenly spread out the weight. Heavy limestone blocks were then added on top of the wood to lift the foundation above the water. The combination of weight above and pressure below created a solid footing. The submerged wooden piles absorbed water and expanded, sealing tightly with no air gaps, a reason why Venice's ancient wooden foundation still holds strong today. After laying the base, people started building homes. Initially they used wood, but these structures often caught fire from cooking flames. Later, bricks replaced wood. To avoid stressing the weak ground, buildings were kept short, rarely over 3 stories. A unique mortar made of crushed limestone was used for flexibility and durability. Interior walls and floors were made of wood, secured by iron rods from the outside. This building style became widespread, and soon the islands were filled with similar homes. Most cities grow outward, but Venice expanded inward. At first, people used boats to move between islands. Over time, shallow areas allowed walking or even riding between them, bringing islands closer together. With a rising population, it became necessary to connect these islands. For centuries, they remained separate, but as commerce grew, especially around the Rialto market, better access was needed. The first solution was a floating wooden bridge, a pontoon. It allowed crossing, but was unstable, and people often fell in. Later, a sturdier wooden bridge replaced it, but in 1310, it was burned during a rebellion. Still, it remained in use for 140 years before collapsing in 1444. Eventually, a stone bridge was planned to connect Rialto. Engineers used the same technique as before. Over 12,000 wooden stakes were driven into the canal's edge to support the weight of a 10,000-ton stone arch bridge. It was so effective that all future bridges followed this model. To this day, Many of those original bridges are still standing and in use. Venice has no roads, only canals. Boats are the main way to get around. This made transporting goods incredibly efficient. In most cities, people and carts fought for road space, but Venice separated foot traffic from water traffic, allowing quicker movement and less congestion. Venice eventually rose to become Europe's wealthiest and most influential city. The secret, its strategic position. Look at a map. Venice lies at the tip of the Adriatic Sea, which leads straight into the Mediterranean. This connects it with Africa, Europe, and the Middle East. Even today, sea routes remain the cheapest way to move cargo. Ships from Eastern Europe and the Middle East could easily sail to Venice. Though land routes connected east and west, ships were the dominant method for trade. Goods from the Black Sea traveled through the Mediterranean and Adriatic to reach Venice. Since ships usually returned empty, Venice offered affordable transport back to Western Europe. Trade made Venice incredibly rich. People from surrounding areas flocked to live there. With the city's growing population came a huge need for fresh water. But the islands were surrounded by salty seawater. There were no rivers or springs. Water had to be brought in barrels from the mainland. But as the population hit 170,000, this method became unsustainable. Venetian engineers had to innovate again. In open spaces, they dug large pits lined with clay and sand for waterproofing. But instead of filling these pits directly with water, they built wells inside them, surrounding them with layers of sand and stones. Tiles covered the top, allowing rainwater to pass through small holes and filter down. As rain passed through the sand and rock, it was naturally purified, like water flowing down a mountain. The clean water collected in the well, ready for use. To collect more rainwater, rooftop pipes funneled it into these systems. With larger collection surfaces, Venice eventually had over 600 wells of various sizes. Typically, 10 to 12 homes shared one. Once again, Venetian ingenuity helped the city thrive. Yet one major challenge remained human waste. Most cities had underground sewage systems, but Venice had no solid ground for such infrastructure. So people dumped waste into the canals. Homes without canal access often threw it into streets, creating terrible odors. In the 1500s, small drains were added to homes to carry liquid waste to the canals. These were built just above average water levels, so solids stayed behind. Twice a day, the rising tides would sweep waste into the lagoon. Because seawater naturally kills bacteria, the canals stayed relatively clean. It's surprising, but this basic sewage system still functions in modern Venice. Its structures, bridges, waterways, and sanitation made it a city ahead of its time, lasting over 1,000 years. However, Venice is slowly sinking about 1 to 2 millimeters each year. It remains the only city with no cars or motorcycles. Each winter, it faces floods known as acqua alta, when the sea rises and floods walkways. Despite a shrinking population of under 50,000, Venice draws over 6 million tourists annually. If you enjoyed this ZemVoice video, don't forget to like and share. Thank you so much for your love and support. See you in the next incredible story.